So this is the third presentation in this session, and I would like to introduce Dr. Markus Maier. Markus is a professor of psychology at the Ludwig-Maximilians-University in Munich, LMU, in Munich, Germany, and he's head of a research unit with the title Emotion and Motivation. And his research, particularly interesting for us, his research focuses on the relationship between mind and matter, precognition and free will. So it's, as you can see, it's a very narrow little idea that he's working on. No, that's a joke. So Markus has a theoretical underpinning to the experimental work he does, and it's in large part derived from the Unus Mundus theory of Wolfgang Pauli and Gustav Jung that they developed together in their collaboration in the 1950s. And he explores what possibilities this brings up for mind-matter interactions, particularly with regard to how experiments can be replicable and be robust. And he's done quite a number of very, very interesting experiments in this regard. And so he's going to explain to us a little bit about those experiments, but particularly the theoretical viewpoint that underpins them. So without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to you, Markus. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter.
Yeah.
And hello to everyone. The main question that I want to focus in my talk here today is the question, does mind create reality? And for example, do prayers have an effect on the objective reality? If we pray for something, can we, for example, if we pray to reduce criminality, can we objectively reduce the crime rate in a city? Or if we meditate for peace, can we end war in Ukraine? So can our mental wishes and intentions have an effect on an objective reality? That's the question that I want to focus about. And there's a theory that we are working with, and this theory describes these kind of effects, and actually it predicts these kind of effects. This theory tells us, well, these kind of effects should exist and they should work. And this is the Unus Mundus theory that Peter mentioned before, developed by Wolfgang Pauli and Carl Gustav Jung. And the theory actually, it supplements or it goes over and above the Cartesian dualism. And let's have a look at the Cartesian dualism in the next slide. René Descartes divided our world into two types of realities. There is one reality that's the material world. And this material world can be measured objectively. Can be documented objectively. It's the area of things that can be described by physics. It's the physical world, and on the other side here, the other world is the area of mind, the spiritual world, or the area of thought or of thinking, and both worlds are separated from each other. They are totally separated from each other. The material world is a material world, and the mind world is an immaterial world, and they have no touching point. They don't connect to each other directly. There's no border between them. They are really fully separated from each other. And the question is now, how can you describe interactions between these two realities? And there are two types of interactions. One is that's what I call perception. One goes from the matter to the mind state. So if you see something and if you passively register something with your eyes or with a measurement instrument, you get an internal representation of the outside world. That this is described by this kind of arrow here. So it starts from the matter side and it goes into the mental representation. It goes from the objective area into the subjective realm. And the other type of interaction, which I am very much interested in my research, is it starts from the mind by an intention or you have a decision, you make a decision, an act of free will, some volitional processes, or you just pray for something to change something. And this is this error here, where the mind has an impact and influence on the material side. And these two aspects are hard to describe in the dualistic model provided by René Descartes, because René Descartes also knew there's a problem, and the problem is, what's the interface between the two of them? What's the connecting unit between the two of them? And between the two of them. And he argued that the brain must be the connecting unit between these two forms of realities. So he identified a certain area in the brain, and he argued that's the interface. That's the point where both are connected. However, the problem with this argument is that the brain is also part of the material world. So it's not really something that is between these two worlds. It clearly belongs to the material part. So there is still an interface missing. And this is addressed in the hard problem of consciousness and the hard or the problem of free will, which both argue an immaterial thing cannot be derived from a material description. So conscious experience, for example, cannot come out or emerge from a material thing because it has nothing to do with material phenomena. And intentions, on the other side, motivational goals, free will, or whatsoever, can also not have an impact on material things, on the brain, for example, because they are immaterial. There is a lack of border. So from a theoretical point of view, there is a huge gap, an unexplained gap in if we take the Cartesian dualistic worldview seriously. And Pauli and Jung provided now a theory that tries to fill in this gap here. This tries to describe another form of reality that provides the missing link between the two. And this is a short overview what's coming next. So I will briefly describe the Unus Mundus theory, and then I will, within this theory, describe how mind-matter interactions, the perception part and the intention part, can be described in this theory. And then I will briefly go into a study that we have done based on these ideas, and to kind of show you an example of how the theory can be applied in an experimental setting. And then I will finish with a summary. So the theory was developed by Wolfgang Pauli and Carl Gustav Jung. Wolfgang Pauli was a quantum physicist. He received the Nobel Prize for his work, and Carl Gustav Jung is the founder of analytical psychology, highly interested in unconscious processes. And both came together. We're talking about the mind-matter interaction, and they came up with a model that I would call it a theory, maybe. And the basic idea is that the conscious mind and physical matter both evolve from a common ground, which is the unus mundus. Unus mundus is a Latin expression for unified world or one world. And they say the Cartesian split, the split into the physical reality and the mental reality, can be supplemented by a third form of reality, and that's the unus mundus reality. And this reality is a reality from which the conscious experience and the material world evolves or emerges. And in this world, in this unus mundus reality, conscious experience and material things exist in their pre-stages. So the pre-stage of a conscious experience is an unconscious, a pre-conscious thought or experience. And this pre-stage of a material object is its quantum description or quantum state. The unconscious mind and the pre-material quantum kind of state form a unity in this unus mundus. They are not separated from each other. They are unified. They cannot be separated. They are two sides of one coin. And this means, this is the term monistic that describes this kind of effect, that both are tied together and not separated. This reality consists of all the potential realities that someone can experience consciously, and these potential realities are there in a quantum kind of state, and you experience them already in your unconscious mind. So you feel already how your future will be. So this is also, all the kind of potential realities are in there, the future realities, the past ones, and you have access to them by your unconscious thoughts and feelings. And this is also a collective unconsciousness, which means it's not only our individual unconsciousness, but also the unconsciousness of other people is in there, and we can have access to their unconscious thoughts. So the duality that we experience consciously, so the conscious experience and the material world around us, is established by a process of measurement. If we measure something, the unified world splits into the dualistic world. It's called an epistemic split in this theory. So, and measurement can be done in two different ways. You can do a passive registration. So you just open your eyes and you just see what's going on, or you can do and try to do an active change. So you can actively change the material side. And these two aspects are called structural correlation and induced correlation. And I will show you these correlations in the next slide. So the structural correlation describes one kind of interaction between mind and matter, the perceptive interaction. So where the measurement is done by a passive registration. And this means if you open your eyes, you have a conscious experience, and at the same time, out of the Unus Mundus, the material world pops out. It's not there at the beginning, it just is there after you measure it. Let me do an example here. This is a dating scenario where a young man meets a young woman, and I think you can't read it, but I will read it for you. And the young guy is asking the young woman out. So he asks her, "Do you want to go for a drink with me?" And there are two options. Let's keep it simple. I know dating is more complicated, but let's keep it simple. The young woman could either reply or answer, "Yes, sure, why not? I want to go out for a drink with you." Or she says, "Oh no, I'm too tired." It splits up into two potential realities. One in which she says yes, and she ends up as a family with this guy. It's a very simplistic story, okay? Or she says no, and they end up on two different locations in the world. Both potential realities exist in our Unus Mundus, in our unconsciousness, and both are unconsciously experienced. The woman then does not make a decision. She just registered what's going on with me. She hates making decisions, and she just let it go. So she just maybe observes, observes herself as saying, "Yes, I wanna go for a drink with you," and she finds herself with this guy having a family. So in this case, the material world and the conscious experience evolve from quantum randomness. It's a random process. She has no impact into it yet. She doesn't. For her, it doesn't matter really. So it's random, the outcome. And this is how a structured correlation works. And this is how everyday perceptions are processed. The nice thing here is it solves the hard problem of consciousness, because you can now explain how conscious experience and the material world are connected to each other. They are connected by the Unus Mundus with a structural correlation. It's more complicated if we look at induced correlations. Let's have a look at the induced correlation. This describes the intentional interactions where the conscious experience and the conscious mind comes first, having an intention, having a goal, and really want something. And you set an impulse and you want to change the material world. So this has also to go through the Unus Mundus. So the Unus Mundus is part of this whole endeavor. And the measurement that is done here is now an active reality construction. It's not a passive registration anymore. It's now a more active reality construction. Let's go back to our example. In this case now, again, the guy is asking the woman out. In this case, she really has a goal. she really likes this guy. He looks so whatever. She really is into him. So she decides, yes, I really want to date him. And by having this intention, by putting in this impulse into the Unus Mundus, the likelihood for this potential reality of ending up as a family together becomes a higher weight. So the probability is raised. And this basically means it's an intentionally induced bias in quantum randomness. And the goal that she has, yes, I want to date him, leads to a higher likelihood for ending up with him and having a family. Okay, so this induced correlation can kind of solve the problem of free will, because there is again an interface that helps us to mediate between a goal and intention and the material world. However, the problem is, and there's a serious problem going on here, in this case, in case of an induced correlation, subjectivity, so which is, intentions or motivational goals or decisions that we make are starting in our subjective mind first. We have hopefully full autonomy over these kind of reactions or processes. So it starts in subjectivity, and in subjectivity, in an induced correlation, needs to transfer it into objectivity, into objective facts, the family that can be photographed or measured or weighted or whatever, So you have a transfer from subjectivity into objectivity, or in other words, you kind of mess up objective reality. Objectivity, the objective world, does not allow free decisions to be done here because it's causally closed. There is no way of an autonomous being having a really autonomous decision here. Everything is governed by rules, by quantum rules or by other natural laws. So if you have an induced correlation, you seriously violate objectivity. This means that if you scientifically want to explore induced correlation, you always get a reduced objectivity. Or in other words, you cannot replicate those findings, you cannot objectify those findings in a very scientific way. So if you push objectivity by studying induced correlation, you lose it. You lose the subjective part, and you get just quantum randomness. And if you reduce objectivity when doing your research, you might get a glimpse or kind of a window into the induced correlation. And I want to show this now in one of our experiments. We have done a micro-PK study. A micro-PK study means that people are sitting in front of a computer screen, and pictures are presented to them, and those pictures are chosen by a quantum number generator, which is a purely random process. And in each trial, it could be either a positive or a negative picture. Let me show you an example. So we have two dog pictures. Either the quantum random number generator is selecting a negative picture, or it is selecting a positive picture. And there are 40 trials, not always dogs, but all different pictures, but always a negative or a positive. And either of this will be presented, chosen by the quantum random number generator. And our observers, our participants, have a clear goal of really seeing positive pictures. So they really are into the positive pictures. They really want to see more positive. They have a clear intention. So now we had two conditions now, or sub-conditions. I'm not explaining the full design, that would take too long, but we had two sub-conditions. In one of these sub-conditions in our experiment, we had the full objectivity. So we were really scientifically testing whether our participants can bias quantum randomness, whether they can produce more positive pictures than expected by chance. And then we have another condition where we reduced our objectivity, the level of objectivity of our measurements. So we went into with a reduced scientific standard. How did we do this? In one condition, so in all these conditions, we had recall data from our participants. After the experiment, we asked them for each sub-condition, how many positive pictures did you see? And they had to recall from the memory the number of pictures, the number of positive pictures that I have seen. So it's only a subjective indicator of the number of pictures they have seen. And we have the objective data, the data that are stored by the computer in a result file. The number of positive pictures chosen by the RNG stored in a result file. In the so-called eraser condition, we only had the recall data and we deliberately deleted the objective data. We erased them from the result file. So now what we find, and these are the results, and it's Bayesian analysis, but you just have to look at the graphs here. The blue graph indicates the statistical results for the objective data. So how many positive pictures have been seen by the observer, have been chosen by the quantum random number generator. And they clearly show a null effect. There were 20 trials, and in 10 of the trials, actually it's almost exactly average, 10 of the trials you had positive pictures, and in 10 of the trials you had negative pictures. And the same is true for the recall data in this subcondition. They also recall that they had only about 10 positive pictures. In the other condition where we deleted the objective data, we cannot analyze them. So there's no graph for the objective data, but we have a graph for the recall data in this condition. And in this condition where the objective data have been deleted, so where the objectivity of our measurement has been reduced, we find that they recall 11 positive pictures. And this is clearly a strong evidence for an effect. So they remember more positive pictures than what you would expect by chance. So in other words, and this is a short summary, intentional agency or micro-PK can be empirically confirmed, at least temporarily, under reduced objectivity conditions, because it's mediated by a semi-objective reality, the Unus Mundus, and you have to explore this reality or document this reality by using less valid data. If you use the full objectivity tools of science, you don't get it. You kill it. You push it away. So in what we think our results show is that quantum randomness is a function of measurement objectivity. So if we push science into a lot of objectivity, we get quantum randomness or no reality construction. If we reduce scientific objectivity, we suddenly find induced correlations. We find reality creation by the mind. So does our world, that's the question I would ask, look random, evolution or Big Bang, because we view it through scientific glasses? And would it look created by our mind or other minds, God or whatsoever, if we would reduce the objectivity? So I think the Unus Mundus might be a nice model, nice theory to describe micro-PK and maybe also precognition, because there is no error of time here in this Unus Mundus, and maybe other psi phenomena. Thank you for your interest.